to the 204th convening of the academic year at Amherst College. Convocation is about marking us in a time and a place. And later I'll say more about this space that we're sitting in today, but I want to start by inviting you to think about the larger place that we're residing right now. The place that we gather today is in the Nunatak homeland of the Kinnetech Valley, which has always been and is still today a crossroads of multiple Native nations and a place of cultural exchange. Home to the Nipmuc and the Wampanoag to the east, the Mohegan and the Pequot to the south, the Mohican to the west, and the Abenaki to the north. As we begin Convocation, let us celebrate the enduring connections between them and this place and people. Convocation celebrates the start of the academic year and the launch of the college career of our new students. We come together today to formally mark the start of our time together dedicated to intellectual growth and fellowship. As we entered this space just now, the class of 2028 and our other incoming students stood while our faculty members processed through them in regalia. Students, you stood as a sign of respect for these people who will be your teachers. And at your graduation, we will reverse this. Our faculty will stand to honor you as you process in your commencement robes in symbolic recognition of the journey you have been on together and your readiness to launch into the world as Amherst graduates. It's been our custom at Amherst to award an honorary Master's of Arts degree to faculty members who have reached the rank of full professor and who are not themselves graduate of the college. This custom derives from a desire to pay tribute to their distinction as teachers and scholars. It shows Amherst's pride in them and expresses our desire to bring them even more closely into the long life of the college. Before we bestow these honorary degrees, I would like to acknowledge Professor Ron Bashford, class of 1988, from the Department of Theater and Dance. Ron, please stand. Ron, Professor Bashford, is a distinguished graduate of the college who became a full professor this year. Custom, some might say strange custom, prevents us from awarding Ron an additional Amherst degree this evening, but from not expressing our pride and accomplishments through our applause. Thank you, Ron. And now we proceed to the awarding of the Masters of Arts degrees. Will the degree recipients please approach the stage? Carol Bailey, Black Studies. Professor Alan Boucher, History. Professor Ashley R. Carter, Physics and Astronomy and Biochemistry, Biophysics. Professor David Haneke, Physics and Astronomy. Professor Hannah Holloman, Anthropology and Sociology and Environmental Studies. Professor David Stewart Jones, Geology. Professor Sheikh Chalm, Black Studies and English. Professor Joe Trapani, Biology and Neuroscience. And Professor David Zurich Brown, Mathematics and Statistics. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you the degree of Masters of Arts honoris causa with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Please join me in congratulating these award recipients. I'm now pleased to introduce the Amherst College Glee Club, led by Director of Choral Music Program and Senior Lecturer in Music, Ariana Bella, which will be performing 3 gifts with words and music by Lisa Smith Vanderlinden, a member of the class of 1989. I know that all of you from the class of 2028 and our new transfer students, I know you've already been in this chapel several times already for orientation sessions, for our DeMott lecture yesterday, but I want to start my talk by asking you to really look around this place. This Johnson Chapel, a 197-year-old building named for a farmer who donated $4,000 because the college needed a place to gather. I've been coming here myself for over 35 years, first as a student like you, and now as president, and lots of times in between. And every time I'm here, especially when I'm up here, I think this is a strange place with its high gloss white, its red carpet just this side of garish, and the pews that are so uncomfortable that we have alumni who literally beg us to buy pillows. Whether you're sitting out there or up here, it's a place where it can be hard to be comfortable. And I imagine that if I feel that way, some of you must feel that same way too right now. The ones not simply wondering how long this president can go on. Some of you might be looking around and wondering, how on earth did you ever end up here? How will you possibly not just live in a place like this, but actually make it your home? Or maybe you don't have that feeling today or here, but it might come on someday when you're sitting in a classroom hearing people talk about books you haven't read yet, films you haven't seen, walking through Val looking for someone to eat lunch with, or even just late at night when you know you should be sleeping. One of the things that students will often say is that this campus wasn't built for us. And what they usually mean is that it was built in some long ago past to serve a bunch of rich white men who lived off trust funds and graduated into Wall Street sinecures. I know that's the stereotype of the history of Amherst, and like most stereotypes, it doesn't tell the whole truth. Amherst wasn't built at once. It's been made and remade over centuries. And even during your 4 years here, you are going to see the physical campus change. And the people who have come to Amherst have never been from just one group. And who has come here also keeps changing and will keep changing over the decades. But what holds us together is something that we have in common. It's our belief that by giving free range to our curiosity, by allowing our minds and even our souls to grow, by asking hard questions and seeking wisdom in each other, by being a community of learners and teachers, we can find what is sometimes the hardest thing of all to find, and that's hope. Hope in a world that seems to be full of peril and challenge. Hope not just in ourselves, but in our fellow students and scholars. And that's why we come to Amherst, and what Amherst at its best offers to us: curiosity and hope. But if you're going to find it, it helps to know the place just a little bit. So let me try to introduce you to a few of these faces as you try to make this place your own. Above me and to the right, my left, is William H. Hasty, class of 1925, who graduated 100 years ago this May. He was first in his class, which means he would have been a senior sitting here 100 years ago. Hasty was born in Tennessee and came to Amherst from Dunbar High School in Washington, a high school where Amherst recruited many black students in the early 20th century. He became one of the most important civil rights lawyers of his age, as well as a judge and a public official. He was, frankly, one of the legal architects of desegregation. Over his lifetime, Hasty set a number of firsts: the first African-American to serve as governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, one of the first black federal judges, one of the first black federal appellate judges. And after a lifetime of public service, he's celebrated as one of the leading legal minds of the 20th century. To the left of me, my right, over here in her Harvard robes, is Rose Olver. Oliver was a professor of psychology. She studied cognitive development and the psychology of the self, and she came to Amherst in 1962 and became the first woman to hold a tenure-track position on the faculty. She sat first after first at Amherst and became faculty marshal, which is why she's holding the mace on her lap so she can keep the faculty in line. Tough job. More than 50 years later, she was the first woman to have her portrait hung in Johnson Chapel, a move initiated by the first woman president of Amherst College, Biddy Martin, who looks at us over here from her Annie Leibovitz portrait. Hi, Biddy. And by some coincidence, while all of you are here as students, we will be celebrating 50 years of coeducation here at Amherst. But the person in Johnson Chapel I've actually been thinking the most about this summer is in this portrait that's directly to my right in the gold frame over there, if you can see it, my left, your right. Nijima Joseph Hardy Nisama, was a young samurai in Japan trained in navigation, and he fled Japan as a stowaway on an American ship. In 1865, he arrived in Boston aboard the Wild Rover, a ship owned by an Amherst trustee. He graduated from Amherst in 1870, returned to Japan, and in 1875 founded a small school in Kyoto. By the time of his death in 1889, he had developed the school, Doshisha, into a center for Christian education, and it would soon become a university. In the early 20th century, his classmates commissioned this portrait of him. Today, Doshisha is an enormous, highly respected university with over 30,000 students, but they still remember their ties to Amherst. Their school colors are purple and white. They have a chapel in the middle of their campus that's very much like this one. I think the pews are just as uncomfortable. And they even have a red brick building on their campus called Amherst House. That would be perfectly at home here. I know because I went to Doshisha this summer, and then I went to visit alumni and students in Korea, Hong Kong, and mainland China, where I actually had a chance to meet some of you, and even some of your parents. I will not bore you today with all the stories from my trip, make you look at photos from my meals, but it was remarkable to witness how Amherst is lived out and continues to matter to people who reside half a globe away, and to hear the Amherst stories that our graduates carry with them, the classes they remember taking, the books they remember reading, the friends that they made, and how they reflect on the meaning of Amherst to them across decades and thousands of miles. What they described to me in different ways was that Amherst taught them how to keep learning and to find meaning over a lifetime, about how to adapt and respond to new opportunities. Looking back, what matters to them about Amherst is not their major or their GPA, but an openness and curiosity that stays with them still. The conversation I remember most, though, was with someone about my same age, who graduated around the same time I did, and who spent his professional life traveling across all of those countries in Asia that I just named. And he wanted to share with me an anxiety that he feels not only about Asia right now, but about the world more generally. He reminded me that while we were students at Amherst in the late 80s, early 90s, walls were coming down all over the world, figuratively and literally. The most famous was the Berlin Wall, and I still have a visceral memory of walking through Val and hearing somebody shout, "The Berlin Wall had fallen." South African apartheid was coming to an end. Nelson Mandela was released from prison while I was a student. The networking of computers was making it possible for everyday people to communicate across the world instantly, something I was only vaguely aware of as a student, but which then became quickly the global internet. When I was at Amherst, there was a sense that the world was coming together. Not perfectly, not easily, but gradually and powerfully. Now, I think to many of us, it feels like the walls are going back up all over the world. We're in an age when across the globe, leaders have emphasized nationalism, have denounced immigration, have tried to culturally detach their nations from the rest of the world. and when our media and social media especially can divide us into narrow groups based on our age, our race, our beliefs with ease. As you start your time at Amherst, you understandably have many decisions to make, large and small, about what to study, about how to spend your time, about how to think about what awaits you after graduation. But I want to encourage you to think as well about an even more broad and abstract question today. Do you want to be part of a world where the walls are going up or where they're coming down? If you want the latter, then what do you want to learn here that can help you create that world? This is not ultimately about what you want to major in, what clubs you want to join. It's about what kind of person do you want to become. It's about learning to occupy a place in the world by finding your place here in this place, this Amherst. We have brought you here not just for your accomplishments and passions as individuals, but because we believe that you have the deep capacity to learn from one another, to become the kind of people who slowly and gradually bring the walls down, or to use another metaphor, to build bridges. Social theorists often use the term bridging ties to describe the relationships that connect people across the usual cleavages of race, class, age, and religion. Bridging ties are not the same as the close connections that we might have with our family or our closest friends, or the hierarchical links that characterize the workplace or even the university. Bridging ties create exchanges and foster equality between people who don't come from the same background and who don't always have the same experiences or see the world in the same way. Danielle Allen, a political philosopher who was once a trustee of this college, observes that not only are individuals with a large number of bridging ties likely to be happier and more successful in the long run, and the research bears this out, but she also points out that societies that are richer in bridging ties will be healthier, more egalitarian, with a stronger foundation for political equality, more democratic with a lowercase d. As a residential college that prides itself on close colloquy, Amherst College is dedicated to the idea that we can become our best selves, our most knowledgeable selves, our most curious, most interesting, most humane selves by living on a campus that forces us into a kind of intimacy with one another. That's why we're all crowded into this chapel today. That's why you all live around the same quadrangle. That's why you all eat in the same dining hall. We believe that this kind of community allows us to take the chance of building bridges rather than walls, to offer one another both our openness to new ideas and the courage of our own convictions, and to trust that your roommate or classmate or clubmate might do the same. It's not always easy to learn and to live with one another in this way. It means that sometimes you'll have to decide whether you'll risk saying something that's different than what everybody else is saying, and I hope you will. We're living in a season of protest, when there's a constant current of skepticism about the value and exercise of free expression on college campuses. Make no mistake, we believe that that freedom is essential to a liberal education at Amherst. But we also believe something else, that we are here explicitly to learn and to listen to one another with care and with empathy, even and perhaps especially to less popular viewpoints or ideas that make us uncomfortable. Speaking up does not mean shouting down, whether the issue is an election in our country or a war halfway across the world. Here in Amherst, in this place, we believe that our curiosity, our pursuit of truth, means that we have not only the right to speech, but the obligation to listen, even when it feels uncomfortable or challenging. That's a difficult proposition. It can be hard to be curious in a period of polarized politics and intense emotion. But you're ready for this, class of 2028. You're ready for this, transfer students. I know, because a couple of weeks ago, I was looking for something to read that would be a little challenging, and so I asked the admissions office if I could read your application essays, all of them. And I came away not just challenged, but inspired, excited, and confident in you, the class of 2028 and our incoming transfer students. You've got this. I learned from your essays that you come here with experience. Many of you wrote about losses in your own life, quite painful losses in your families. You wrote about the challenges of moving between countries and cultures. Several of you described quite movingly the difficulties of beginning high school in the midst of COVID-19, about what it means to wear a mask every day, and even how complicated it could be to take that mask off. I learned from your essays that you come here with passions. You named your favorite books and bands. You described your love of everything from mathematics to maps to soups to the planet Uranus. One of my favorite essays was about how the writer developed from a very early age a passion for light bulbs and would delight in finding burned out bulbs in the stores that he visited, and then later extended his interest, branching out, to ventilation ducts and smokestacks. We're ready for you wherever you are. Many of you wrote about the pleasure you find in games and puzzles, chess, Dungeons and Dragons, cribbage, poker, board games, jigsaw puzzles. You like play and competition, the bonds that are forged around a table, even when you lose. I also found out that collectively you have a gift for creating odd pairings and managing to fit them seamlessly into a short essay. I suspect this is a strategy that college counselors must be pushing out there, but you've mastered it. You wrote about Lana Del Rey and John Keats, ceramics and weightlifting, contrapuntal music and trans activism. There's a really nice essay that manages to cover, in about a page and a half, anatomical museums, the dystopian novel Brave New World, and cockroaches. I am not sure how, but the essay works. This kind of linguistic thinking is its own form of bridge building, of forging connections. And one of you wrote about, thank you, building a literal bridge, a 32-foot span in a South Carolina state park that required days of work from dozens of people. In fact, many of your essays took place, so to speak, out of doors and describe encounters with the natural world. These were some of the most rewarding for me to read because they helped me to think about a question that I've been pondering and talking about with many of my colleagues on the faculty. How and why do we find beauty in a time of peril? Because you have found beauty. Your essays describe learning to read the bark of trees, finding wonder in the lives of bees and butterflies, and listening to the songs of birds. One of you wrote about pressing flowers and how it's helped you to create bonds with members of your family that might not have otherwise existed. There's a wonderful poetic essay about the daily chore of collecting eggs from chickens and how the writer came to think differently about social justice by raising barnyard fowl. And then there's an equally remarkable essay about recovering the mauled body parts of tree swallow chicks killed by predators at only 2 weeks old, just a couple of days before they could fly away. A few minutes ago, I invited you to think about a big question. Do you want to be a part of a world where the walls are going up or where bridges are being built? I want to close tonight by inviting you to think about another big question, a question we are all going to be thinking about during your time at Amherst College, and that I think you will be considering for many years after. What will it mean to be human as the technology that we've built, artificial intelligence, and continue to build can do more and more of the work that used to occupy the human mind? No matter what artificial intelligence can do, it won't be able to replace the kind of wonder and awe that many of you have found in the natural world. Nor will it replace the delight that transports us in the presence of great art, or the curiosity that tugs and pulls us to learn more about something we cannot understand. It won't replace the challenges or the pleasures of trying to figure out what it means to live side by side with people who see the world differently than we do. Artificial intelligence may be able to describe concepts like equality or justice, but artificial intelligence will not be able to achieve them for us. All of those things require people. People who are like you, people who are, in fact, you. And there is no better place to learn those things, those hard things, about what it means to be human, about what it means to be curious, about how to build bridges, about what it means to find beauty and hope amidst the dangers of your time than this place, this Amherst. And there is no better set of teachers than the people who are sitting around you, your faculty and your fellow students. And there is nothing more inspiring for me as president than to get to watch that unfold, which is what I will be doing in the weeks, months, and years to come. So welcome to Amherst. Let's get started. Thank you, and let's have a wonderful academic year. To conclude this evening's program, the Glee Club will lead us in singing Hymn to Amherst. You'll find the words in your program. After we sing the hymn together, students, please remain in place while the faculty recess out of the chapel. As you exit the chapel, I hope you will all join me for fellowship and conversation in the especially illuminated quad. And now I ask that you please rise if you're able and sing as you are able. Thank you.